Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today and talking to all of you. I hope you will find this session useful and we will take the questions at the end of the session. Managing oneself is arguably one of the most important things in management because it's only when we can manage ourselves then we are able to manage others in a much better way. I'm going to try and share my story in the most honest way that I can. So please do forgive me if I do become emotional at times, because even though it's 3 years down the line, it's still quite difficult to relive all those situations that has led to me be where I am today. It was the 17th of July 2019 when I remember just waking up around the middle of the night from anesthesia from my surgery, and I felt that I just could not move my legs. Initially I thought it was maybe just the anesthesia or the tight stockings that I had on my legs. So I called out the nurse, and as expected, the nurse also kind of said the same thing, that don't worry, doc, it's your stockings and it should be better by the evening. Oh, sorry, next morning. And the next morning came, the situation got worse. I could feel the numbness and tingling and the lack of power in both my legs, and that feeling went up to my waist. And I spoke to my surgeon, and the surgeon said the same thing, and he put me on steroids. The physiotherapist tried to mobilize me out of the bed to take me to the bathroom, and I realized that my legs were not working, and I kept telling the doctor my steroid dose were increased, and it kind of continued for almost 4 days before eventually I got another MRI scan. And it was when the MRI scan was done, it showed that there were quite severe complications from that first surgery. And that was the reason which has led to my symptoms. I was then immediately shifted to another bigger hospital for a much bigger surgery where they tried to decompress my spinal cord. But unfortunately, that delay of 4 days killed that part of my spinal cord and left me with a permanent disability, and I was left with paralyzed legs, which led to a stay in and out of the hospital for almost 7 months, which was originally meant to be one single day. It was quite life-changing, as you can imagine. And just when I was kind of getting used to what had happened and thinking of ways to recuperate, one day the matron of the ward in the hospital asked me, "Doc, would you like a copy of your reports?" And I casually said, "Yes, why not?" Her name is Roxanne, I remember, a Spanish girl. And she bought my reports, and as I flipped through the reports, one of the scan reports said that there is a tumor in my thyroid gland, most likely to be malignant. Sometimes being a doctor can be a blessing, sometimes it can be a curse as well, because you tend to know some of those medical terms that are sometimes better not knowing. So I called up my neurologist who had been my lifesaver because the surgeon who did the original surgery, he abandoned me. And I called him and said, Dr. Silva, I think I've got cancer. He said, no, it can't be. I said, I've just seen my scan. Can you organize a biopsy for me tomorrow? Because I think I do have cancer in my thyroid. And as it happened, the next day, I had my biopsy, what we call as FNAC, or fine needles aspiration cytology in medical terms. And it did turn out to be a form of cancer in the thyroid. And then I had to go for further surgery to get the thyroid removed. So we can kind of argue what led to all this. And I thought there must be a reason behind all this, and it is now for me to find out what that reason is. I remember those days in the hospital lying all by myself. I had asked my wife and my daughters not to visit me more than once a week because it was quite traumatic both for them and for myself. It was quite hard for my wife because she had to take on all the duties of the family as well as do her full-time job. And it was quite difficult for my daughters to see me in this position, lying in the bed, not being able to get up, not being able to do what a normal father would be able to do. One night, while at Wellington Hospital, I needed to go to the toilet, and as luck would have it, the bell to call the nurse, it fell from the bed, and I couldn't call her on time. And in spite of my best efforts, I passed urine in the bed. I tried to shift myself somehow to sleep on the drier part of the bed, but I couldn't. So eventually I did manage to call the nurse, and when she came in, she was very kind. She said, I'll change you, I will change the sheets, don't worry. And she did her best in order to strip me, change my underwear, put new sheets in the bed. And that made me realize how many times as a doctor I had done the same for the patients I had been looking after. But I never felt the humility that they must have felt at that time. That was the time when I decided, no, enough was enough. I won't let life or anything else decide what is going to be my future. I'm going to decide my future myself. That was probably the day of the awakening. You know, everybody wants to be in control. You do, I do. Everyone does, and it is easy to be in control when things are going well. But it is when you are faced with unprecedented things, when things are not going your way, that you need to be more in control. It is when you are faced with overwhelming circumstances that it is important to keep the trust in yourself and keep that control. I remember an incident when I was in class 6. It was in Nagaon at the time. I had come third for the second time in the class, and I was quite pleased with myself. And when my principal asked me to get my dad to meet him, I was pretty chuffed. I was pretty happy, thinking that he would be congratulating me. But instead, in front of my dad, he said, "So Bhaskar, you're gonna travel in third class all the time? I think you have it in you, to travel first class, but you're not trying hard enough. And that was probably one of the most embarrassing things that I ever remember in the early stages of my life. And that is when I had decided I will try to be a winner no matter what. In a way, that humiliating incident was a blessing as a prop up for me to do better in life. Adaptation is very important, as you all know. It is important to adapt to the situation. It is also important to realize that there are certain things in life that you can change, and there are certain things that you can't. And it is important to focus on the things that you can change rather than wasting your energy on the things that you can't. Acceptance is probably the first step towards your fight of survival. It doesn't mean that you have to be satisfied with what you have. Denial is probably a good short-term strategy, but you can't be in denial of your situation forever. It is important to accept that things are not as they used to be. It is important to accept the new normal so that you can make ways to make a better future for yourself. I remember it was just after my MBBS when, like many of my friends, we moved to Delhi to work as junior residents because the income in Delhi was about 10 times more than what we were paid in Assam. And those were good times, lots of fun, lots of drinks, lots of money. And we were young. But it was just after a couple of months that I had joined that my dear father had a stroke. And one morning I received a call from my mom to say, "Your dad is dying. Can you come immediately?" At that very moment, the sky fell down on my head, literally. I had no money to buy a flight ticket, and I'm talking about 2000, when things were a bit different. I was in the doctor's hostel, and before I knew it, one of the guys said, he just shouted out in the corridor that Bhaskar's father had a stroke and he needs to go home and we need to help. And believe it or not, people came in with small change of 5 rupees to 500 rupees, and they put everything on my bed, and soon my bed sheet was flowing with money. And when it was counted, it was about 7,000 rupees, which was more than enough to buy a flight ticket and a taxi to go back home to the hospital. That was unfortunately my last day of working in Delhi because I never got a chance to go back. My dad was in coma for 29 days, and it was a choice I had to make whether to carry on with my career or to look after my dad and keep him alive the best I can. And I'm glad I chose for the latter. It was during that time when my entrepreneurial journey had started. It was at that time when, because I couldn't do night duties or do a proper job, as I had to look after my dad all the time, as he was a complete vegetable, I did all sorts of odd jobs, from driving a taxi from Guwahati to Shillong, running a bus counter, doing odd jobs, anything that would bring in money to the family. And I'm glad to say that I was able to support my family, especially my brother who was in the final year of engineering at that time. And it's been since 2000 that I had been running my family. And my father, although was severely disabled, lived on for another 21 years and passed away in 2021. Sometimes fulfilling others' dreams gives you more satisfaction, more happiness than fulfilling your own ones. When my father got better, I joined at Kakajan Tea Estate as a medical officer. It was during those times when basically every evening turned out to be a time for drinking with friends, to be in denial, to wash away all the sorrows. Know that I met my future wife, Millie. And thanks to those lifelong friends who are still looking after my parents in these 19 years that I have been in England, she and those friends managed to get me back on track into medicine. And I joined as a medical officer in Kakajan Tea Estate, running an 80-bedded hospital and my first proper management job. It was an incredible experience there, looking after 17,000 tea garden employees with the barest minimum of resources. It was around 19 years ago when me and my wife we decided to immigrate to England. And as first generation immigrant, we faced all the struggles that you would expect. But thinking back now, those were happy days of struggle. Something you don't realize at that time. We had initially rented a bed, not even a room, and then had to travel by bus because we could not afford the train. Every single penny was important till one of us secured a job. The journey, which by train would have taken a mere half an hour, took me about 3.5 hours each way to reach from where I was staying to the hospital where I was doing voluntary work. But thankfully, I got my job within the first 2 months. My wife, Millie, she worked in a shop, then in another, before securing a good job with an American company as a financial analyst. And I got into a job that also gave me a training rotation. I initially did surgery, and then I went into family medicine, which is a specialization also called general practice in the UK. After completing my post-graduation, I joined as a partner in a polyclinic or a GP surgery, as it's said here, with an English chap, Dr. Langley. And that was again my first proper managerial position in this country as a senior doctor. And from one practice with a turnover of around £480,000, equivalent to about 48 lakhs per year, over a period of the next 6 to 7 years, I managed to increase it to about 2.3 million pounds a year. And everything was just going right. I got into real estate investment, into stock investment. I bought a restaurant and became an entrepreneur in the true form. I became the first Assamese to open a restaurant and a cocktail bar in London. And I thought life couldn't be any better, hardly knowing what was there ahead of me. We had two beautiful daughters, and everything was going well. But it's when the sun is shining that you need to prepare for any rain. Luckily, during that time, I had invested in a lot of insurance, starting from critical illness to income protection to private health insurance, life insurance, you name it, I had it. And my friends almost made a joke of it. Why am I spending so much money in insurance that I could otherwise be using for holidays? But today, believe it or not, it is those insurances which have still kept me at my home. So do remember, make sure that you fix your roof when the sun is shining, because when it starts raining, it can be too late. When the storms come, an eagle flies higher to rise above the turbulence, while a mouse hides in the corner. It is up to you whether you want to become that eagle or you want to hide away as a mouse. Achievements make us thankful. Struggles make us stronger. It is when we appreciate our struggles, that is when our adversities can become our opportunities, and it can define who we are. Not everything is bad about adverse times. It is during these adversities you'll find many who will show you sympathy, but there will be very few who will actually empathize with you. It is also during adversities that you get to know who your real friends and your real well-wishers are, whether inside or outside the family. I remember the times when I was always accompanied by lots of fair weather friends. Some of them even took me as a study case about how to become rich or successful. But the day I stopped becoming useful for them, they just shied away. Many of them don't even pick up the phone just in case I might be asking for my money back or any loan from them. So, yeah, be careful about such friends. But at the same time, when you find a real friend or your family, they are probably the closest thing to God in flesh and blood. Never let go of them. I was never scared of death, but I was always scared of being half dead. Having seen my dad in a wheelchair, being disabled and not being able to do anything for himself, I always prayed to God not to be ever paralyzed. But there is something called the law of attraction, which you probably all know, that whatever you fear the most come true. And that is what exactly happened to me. I became a mirror image of my dad today, confined to a wheelchair or being able to walk only short distances with two crutches. These crutches became my best friends, as did my dogs. And everything in life changed just in the way I had hoped not to happen. Everybody wants to retire at 40 and live a dream life. And I did retire at 40, but just not in the way you would want to. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. The fears don't go away, but with a positive thinking, with affirmation, with visualization, I can manage those fears and I can diffuse them. And in doing so, I feed my inner voice as life continues to evolve, and so can you. It is frustrating for anyone who have not achieved success yet. But it is even more difficult for people who have achieved that pinnacle of success only to lose it all and then needing to build it up again. The walk downhill, especially if untimely, is probably much more painful and heartbreaking. And I have done that walk. The courage is not in never falling, because if somebody says they haven't ever fallen, that means either they are literally born with a silver spoon or they have never tried hard enough. The courage lies in rising up higher every time you fall. That is what I'm trying to do. At one time, I was a successful doctor, a successful entrepreneur, a self-made man, probably even rich, according to many people, although I never felt rich enough. But today, I'm more a waiter or a cocktail maker in my restaurant. Even though I am still the boss and the employer, I have to lead by example. And I go and wait tables, I go and take orders from every customer. And that has in fact helped me because I still have some social connection. All my customers know my story. They get inspired. Many of them have read my books. They come back with their friends to share my story. And it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling when you can inspire people with your story, however difficult it might be for you. Every heart you touch, every person you inspire, it makes your life living worthwhile. It is important to keep sight of the future while you're enjoying the present, but it is equally important to enjoy your present while planning for the future, and it is a very fine balance. One important thing that I have learned and I would suggest to you is that never put all your eggs in one basket. In all management books, you'll find the saying that diversification is the best way to reduce your risk, and it is actually true. It is only because I had all these different businesses, small or big, which has still kept me going. Because although I had to give up all my clinics. I had to sell off a few houses, and I had to give up many things. But still, because I had those insurances, I had those investments, I'm still getting some returns back, and I hope to build on them again. So always do think of diversifying your portfolio as much as you can, but only after research. Make sure you diversify only within your range of expertise. When I realized the lasting impact of my permanent disability, it was hard enough getting into terms with the physical problems and the emotional problems, but my worst fear was the financial insecurity, given the fact that I had to take ill health retirement. My daughters, who are now 16 and 12, I'm talking about 3 years ago when they were 3 years younger, they asked me, Daddy, will we still be able to go to university? And I did tell them, yes, you will be. But in telling them, I was reassuring not just them, but I was reassuring myself that I have to keep this resilience going. I have to have this positive frame of mind. I have to control my own destiny, my own future, along with the support of my family and friends. And however uncertain life is at the moment, like looking at a foggy night in the forest through broken glasses, I still had to keep fighting. And 3 years down the line, I can now see a little light, as if the first sun rays of the morning. And I hope things will get better if I can carry on and persevere. I had to first count my blessings and find what I still had with me, rather than concentrating or lamenting on the losses that I had made. But there is always a reason behind everything. Before my accident, I was a full-time doctor, seeing 55 patients a day, earning money, running in a non-ending rat race, never having any time to reflect. And I was having a good reputation, but that was within that local geography. Now with my book, with my social media, I can't believe that I have had feedback about how my book has changed their perspective of life, or how it has affected them, from no less than 21 countries. I have been invited to talk from places like Palestine, from Afghanistan, from Mozambique, and many other places, including this opportunity that I have got to interact with you all. This probably wouldn't have happened without that calamity. Too busy to appreciate the blessings during the good times, too preoccupied to enjoy the present. It needed a calamity to bring in the spiritual and the emotional evolution. Our inner voice is always with us. We see miracles every day, and miracles doesn't need to be a thunder in the sky or a genie coming out from the lamp. Miracle may be just meeting a particular person on that particular day who can make a change in your life, or doing a small good deed to make a positive difference to someone's life. We get cryptic clues, and we just need to be reflective enough to listen to those clues, to be able to decipher them. But often we are too busy and we ignore it. You never know when opportunity comes and knocks at your door, but for that, you have to be first receptive enough. I always suggest to everyone that don't ever say no in the first instance, however stupid that proposal might sound to you. Always listen to that first, reflect on it, sleep on it, analyze it, maybe even try it, and only then you decide whether to go ahead or to say no. Because if you say no in the first instance, you've already closed the door and there is no chance for you to grow. Negativity would only attract more negativity, and eventually it leads on to frustration, depression, maybe even more mental health issues. So there is no point in being negative, and the world has no time for losers. This world only has time to laugh with you when you're having a good time, but it will laugh at you when you're going through a bad time. Everything is give and take in all relationships. Whether it's a relationship with your loved one, with your parent, with your friends, everything is a two-way traffic. You are only valuable if you can give back something. We come alone and we go alone. So it is a good habit to try to enjoy our own company and be a self-start machine rather than a kickstart one, or rather a push-start one. Because if you can enjoy your own company and be in bliss, then everything else that comes is a bonus. In whatever you do, just try to be the best and do your best. That is what my dad taught me, and that is what I have tried to follow, and I have been rewarded for it. Whether it is being the best doctor that I could possibly be, and now be the best waiter that I can be. It is about doing the best you can. I remember a time when I was explaining what wine goes with which kind of Indian dish, and I was told by an elderly gentleman that you are a very good waiter. And that made me reflect in a lot of emotions. On one hand, I thought, what am I doing? Rather than seeing patients and being a doctor, I'm waiting on table. But on the other hand, I realized that I must have done my job properly, and that is why I have got this compliment. At the same time, I have also been called a cripple, sometimes out of fun, sometimes more seriously. But there's no point in losing your temper with it, because at the end of the day, it's the truth. I am disabled, but there's no point in lamenting over the fact of your disability. I just think that perhaps I am now differently abled and I have got a different purpose. In order to be successful in life, confidence is very important. But confidence without clarity can be a disaster. Imagine if you are confident when you don't know what you really need to do and you're trying to fly a plane. Intellect is a sharp knife. With the right person, it can make a sculpture. It can cut the vegetables in the most beautiful way. Or with the wrong person, it can stab another one and cause a murder. So be careful with how you use your intellect. You cannot always be popular and be effective, especially if you are in a managerial position or you are a business owner or an entrepreneur, because many a time you will have to make harsh decisions, but you have to try and take it in your stride. It is quite easy to moan at your bosses, to moan at your teachers, to moan at everybody else, because everybody else in this world can be wrong. But when you become your own boss, who will you moan at? It is at that time, when there is nobody else to police you, it is even more important to be disciplined and to lead by example when you are self-employed, when you are in a senior position, and when you are managing yourself. Recently, as I was coming back from India and I landed in Heathrow in the morning, and I turned on my phone, the first message I got in my Facebook Messenger was from a female colleague, a white girl whom I have never met or spoken to. And she wrote to me saying that yesterday was the London Marathon and I trained for months, but when it was about 3 miles to go, I just wanted to give up because my body wouldn't take anymore. It was at that time I remembered your book, I remembered your social media post. There you are, not able to walk, and here I am privileged to be able to run, and I am giving up. So I gathered all my courage and my last strength, and I did manage to finish the marathon, and I wanted to dedicate my medal to you. That has been, ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest rewards that I have got, and I have got many more such rewards. So although financially poorer, I am a lot richer by life's experiences. We cannot control what the universe throws at us, but how we react to those curveballs define who we are and what we make out of our lives. With a true grit, determination, and resilience, and with positivity, affirmation, and visualization, you can indeed turn every adversity into an opportunity. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I can do it, you can too. We all can. Thank you very much. Thank you.